When you think of the United States, you think of freedom, endless possibilities, and the American dream. Our nation is one of the main world powers, and it leads other countries by examples in many ways. But there is one glaring outlier. No matter what the cause, the fact is that for decades, the U.S. has towered above other developed nations in gun violence. This problem is reinforced by poverty, drugs, and a strict division in gun laws and opinions in our country. Almost nothing is being done, and the problem is not getting any better. Too many Americans are dying due to gun violence. In this documentary, we will explore the gun violence in America through hard facts and various points of view from people who have differing opinions from totally different walks of life. A pastor who lost his sons, a gun store owner who works to keep guns from going to the wrong hands, a police chief who had to make a split-second decision, a gun rights supporter, a gun safety activist, and a crime reporter. Through these stories, we will uncover each of their beliefs through these three questions. Is there a gun problem? What is the cause? And how do we fix it?
How many more mothers, how many more fathers need to shed tears of grief?
There's no respect for each other no more. We have totally lost contact.
Before we do anything else, let's take a look at the numbers that lay out the problem. Jillian Berger will take us through an in-depth look on the facts of gun violence and where we as a country stand in this problem compared to the rest of the world.
Whether you're for or against guns, there's no denying the fact that America has some staggering numbers when it comes to gun violence. There are 13,286 people killed in gun homicides in America. Without counting suicides, 26,819 people were injured. Car accident deaths in America was around 35,000 people, while the amount of gun deaths was 33,000. That's a difference of only 2,000 people.
My 14-year-old son was walking out of a convenience store just buying some candy and got caught in some crossfire and he got shot once in the chest and died.
And sadly, tragedy struck again in 2010.
My 26-year-old son was around the corner just talking to a friend at the friend's house. A guy decided to walk down the street and rob them both, shot my son 3 times. He died 8 days later.
Father Hawkins had been active against gun violence for years, but after his sons were killed, his activity increased more and more. So did the activity of gun violence.
Williams Gun Site in Davison has been in business for 90 years, and with the nationwide gun applications quadrupling since 2008, Williams is booming, selling over 100 guns a week. As Chief Operating Officer, Brian Wright has gotten to know people from all different backgrounds that come into his store.
We've had the 80-year-old grandma come in to buy a handgun for personal protection because she might live in an area where she feels a little unsafe compared to where she used to, all the way to somebody that just all they do is target shoot.
Williams' biggest concern is safety and doing things legally. That is why buying a gun here is such a process. That process begins with you must be 18 years old or older. Then, after picking out your firearm, they fill out the federal paperwork. It begins with general questions and then goes into deeper questions such as if you have a criminal record. Then, Williams calls the FBI and you will get a proceed, and you finish with the sale, a delay of up to 3 business days, or a deny and the sale is finished.
Columbine, Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, Aurora. Before mass shootings were on the rise, these were just places on a map. The definition states a mass killing as a mass attack of 4 or more people during an event with no cooling off period. In the 17 years before Columbine, there were only 27 mass killings in the U.S. In the 17 years after Columbine, there have been over double the numbers. The media is also a huge influence on mass killings. News media and social media explode with headlines within minutes of hearing about a mass shooting. It can help spread awareness, but it can also strike fear.
The debate on gun control has been an ongoing topic for a long time now. But in light of recent events, it's becoming an even more stressed issue. And, as time goes on, it's now a game of tug-of-war between the Democrats and Republicans.
The Democrats go on high dudgeon that we've got to restrict the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens.
By the end of this year, Madam President, 30,000 Americans will have died from gun violence.
Now the government is stuck between a rock and a hard place. between gun control and upholding the right to bear arms. The opinions of the cause for this problem are widely ranged, which is creating a gap when it comes to a solution.
Chief Tim Johnson knows all too well what it's like to have death staring him in the face. While being choked out from behind, a criminal reaching for his gun, and on the brink of passing out, Johnson made the conscious decision to tough it out and physically deal with the situation without unholstering his gun.
I could have shot and killed him, without a doubt, and walked away from it a clean shooting. I felt like I could handle him. I felt like I was in good enough shape to where I mean, it was a few times I could have shot and killed somebody, but I felt like I was physically fit enough to deal with the situation I was involved in, and I didn't shoot him.
Mike Chilson, husband and father, has very strong views on gun violence. Having grown up with a family of hunters and later on in life serving our country in combat, he has always been around guns, and now his family is too.
My wife knows how to shoot, my children know how to shoot, they're familiar with guns also, so they're not afraid, they're not curious, they know that they're off limits.
While he believes in more lenient gun laws, Chilson's solution comes with some restrictions. He thinks we should arm our population so that the American people are not walking targets for criminals with illegal weapons.
And you go to Texas, which is a total polar opposite, who has very lenient gun restrictions, and the violent crimes are way down.
A lot of the kids we're working with don't think they're going to make it to their 18th birthday. That's not okay. But that's the real reality in these communities.
Colleen Daly, the executive director of Illinois' Council Against Handgun Violence, often finds herself working with the children of Chicago, whom are no strangers to gun violence. The sound of a gunshot is unusual to most children in the U.S., but sadly it's commonly heard in the city of Chicago. Just in the year 2016, there were over 4,000 shootings, and almost every weekend, the headlines looked like this. A problem so big, even a group whose sole purpose is trying to put a stop to gun violence, the solution isn't easy to find.
If there was an easy answer to this issue, we would have solved it by now. But there's not one gun law that's going to fix this.
When Colleen first started lobbying against gun violence, she said it was lonely dealing with an issue no one wanted to get involved with because it was too controversial. But as the shootings increased, so did her group of supporters.
This is an elite group of people that no one wants to be in this club. And what you hear from them time and time again is, I didn't get involved because I never thought it could happen to me. And then my child was killed.
Sirens burst into excitement down the packed streets of Chicago multiple times a day. Onlookers look over to see what all the commotion's about, but rarely get the full story. This is everyday Chicago life, but is there more to it than those sirens proclaim? Frank Main, a crime reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times, understands all too well.
It is like your hair is always on fire in Chicago. It is, especially in the last year and a half. Crime, murder and shootings have doubled, and so it's impossible to concentrate on every single one of those crimes.
Main has been covering crime for almost 20 years in Chicago. He says there's a certain level of violence that can't surely be stopped.
There is no doubt that America is deep in a gun violence crisis. By sharing these stories, we hope to have laid out the problems and the debate that surround guns in the U.S. There is a gun violence problem in this country. Americans are in the line of fire. You have heard the feelings of 6 very different people, the government standpoints, and the numbers that could leave you speechless. During this special, we reached out to the NRA, Black Lives Matter Detroit, and were denied access to gun shows. The debate about guns in our country is so strong that it has paralyzed us from making any changes. American people are still being shot in high numbers, and the problem is that the solution to this crisis doesn't seem to be a priority, and the people will continue to die.